If you're planning to move to Australia in 2025, what I'm about to tell you could literally save you thousands of dollars or cost you your entire application. The Australian government just made some massive changes to visa fees and income requirements, and if you don't know about these changes right now, you could be in for a very expensive shock. I'm talking about visa fees that have literally tripled in 18 months. Student visas that jumped from $710 to $2,000. Income requirements that increased by over $4,000 overnight. And the crazy part, most people applying for Australian visas right now have absolutely no idea these changes even happened. So stick with me because in the next few minutes, I'm going to break down exactly what changed, who's affected, how much more you'll need to pay, and most importantly, what you can do right now to protect yourself from these increases. Let's start with the bombshell that hit international students the hardest. On July 1, 2025, the Australian student visa fee jumped from $1,600 to $2,000. That's a 25% increase in 1 year. But here's what makes this even more insane. Just 18 months ago in early 2024, that same visa cost only $710. So in less than 2 years, the student visa fee has increased by 182%. Let me say that again. 182% increase in 18 months. Think about what that actually means. If you applied for a student visa in early 2024, you paid $710. If you're applying right now in December 2025, you're paying $2,000. That's an extra $1,290 just for the visa application. And here's the really painful part. This fee is non-refundable. If your application gets rejected, you lose that entire $2,000 and have to pay it all over again if you want to reapply. But wait, because it gets worse. The $2,000 fee is just for you as the primary applicant. If you're bringing family members with you, they each have to pay additional fees. For anyone 18 years or older, the fee is now $1,225 per person. For anyone under 18, it's $400 per person. So imagine you're a student bringing your spouse. That's $2,000 for you, plus $1,225 for your spouse. That's $3,225 just in visa fees before you've even bought a plane ticket or paid a single dollar in tuition. Now let me show you something that's going to blow your mind about why this happened. The Australian government says they increased these fees to manage the volume of applications and ensure students can adequately support themselves. But here's what research actually shows. According to the Grattan Institute, the government is using pricing signals to filter out people who are using student visas as backdoor pathways to permanent residence. They want genuine education seekers, not people who view the student visa as an immigration loophole. The numbers tell the whole story. Australia welcomed over 780,000 international students in 2023. That number grew by approximately 18% in 2024. The government set its national planning level at 295,000 new international student places for 2025 to 2026. That's 25,000 more than the previous year's limit, but still 8% below the immediate post-COVID peak. Translation? They want fewer students, and they're using price increases to make that happen. Here's what nobody's telling you about these student visa changes. Australia now has the world's most expensive student visa by far. At $2,000 Australian dollars, it's more than 6 times higher than Canada's student visa fee. 6 times. Canada charges around $300 Canadian. The UK charges around £390. New Zealand charges only $32 US. Australia? 2,000 Australian dollars. It's not even close. This massive price difference is already having real effects. Education providers in Australia are seeing enrollment inquiries drop. Prospective students are choosing Canada, the UK, or New Zealand instead because the visa alone is pricing them out. Universities and colleges that depend heavily on international student fees are starting to panic because they're facing reduced intake and revenue challenges. The ripple effects across Australia's international education sector are just beginning. But hold on, because student visas aren't the only thing that got more expensive. Let me tell you about what happened to skilled work visas, because this affects anyone planning to work in Australia on an employer-sponsored visa. On the exact same day, July 1, 2025, the Australian government increased income thresholds for skilled visas by 4.6%. Now, 4.6% might not sound like much, but when we're talking about minimum salary requirements, it adds up fast. Here's what actually changed. The core skills income threshold increased from $73,150 to $76,515. That's an increase of $3,365 per year. The specialist skills income threshold increased from $135,000 to $141,210. That's a jump of $6,210 per year. And the temporary skilled migration income threshold, which affects regional visas, also increased from $73,150 to $76,515. Now let me explain why this matters to you. If you're applying for a skilled visa in Australia, your employer has to pay you at least these threshold amounts. It's the law. They can't pay you less, even if they want to. So if you had a job offer for $74,000 and you were planning to apply before July 1st, you would have been fine because that was above the old threshold of $73,150. But if you're applying now after July 1st with that same $74,000 offer, you're in trouble. You need at least $76,515, or your application will be rejected. Watch this closely because here's where it gets really important. These thresholds apply to different visa types. The core skills income threshold affects the skills in demand visa subclass 482 and the employer nomination scheme visa subclass 186. These are the most common employer-sponsored work visas in Australia. If your occupation is on the core skills occupation list, you need to meet this threshold. Currently, that's $76,515 minimum. The specialist skills income threshold is much higher at $141,210. This applies to the specialist skills stream of the skills in demand visa. It's for highly specialized roles that require advanced expertise. Think senior engineers, specialist doctors, top-level IT professionals. If you're applying under this stream, your employer needs to offer you at least $141,210, or you won't qualify. The temporary skilled migration income threshold affects regional visas like the Skilled Employer-Sponsored Regional Visa Subclass 494 and the Regional Sponsored Migration Scheme Visa Subclass 187. If you're willing to work in regional Australia outside the big cities, you still need to meet the $76,515 threshold. Now here's something critical you need to understand. These thresholds are indexed annually. Every single year on July 1st, they go up in line with the average weekly ordinary time earnings in Australia. The government uses this indexation to make sure that skilled migrants are being paid fairly compared to Australian workers, and to prevent employers from using foreign workers to undercut local wages. So these thresholds will keep rising every single year. The 4.6% increase we just saw, that's going to happen again next year, and the year after that, and every year going forward. Let me give you a reality check about what this means for your salary negotiations. Your employer doesn't just have to meet the income threshold. They also have to pay you the annual market salary rate, which is what an equivalent Australian worker would earn in the same role. Whichever is higher between the threshold and the market rate is what you must be paid. So if the market rate for your job is $80,000, you need to be paid $80,000, even though the threshold is only $76,515. The threshold is the floor, not the ceiling. And here's something that changed recently that makes this even more strict. For the Skills in Demand Visa Subclass 482, the salary threshold now has to be met through monetary earnings only. You can't include non-monetary benefits like accommodation or car allowances to meet the threshold. Your actual cash salary has to be at or above the threshold. Only then can you add non-monetary benefits on top. This is a huge change because some employers used to structure packages with lower cash salaries but higher non-monetary benefits to meet the old requirements. That doesn't work anymore. So, what should you do right now if you're planning to apply for an Australian visa? Let me give you some very specific action steps based on which visa you're going after. If you're a student, here's your game plan. First, factor the $2,000 visa fee into your budget immediately. Add another $1,225 for each adult family member and $400 for each child if you're bringing family. This is on top of tuition, flights, health insurance, and living expenses. Second, be prepared for the increased financial capacity requirement. As of May 2024, you need to prove you have access to at least $29,710 per year for living expenses. That's up from the previous $24,505. This is a massive increase of $5,205 per year. The government wants to make sure you can support yourself without relying too heavily on part-time work. Third, understand that this visa fee is non-refundable. Make absolutely certain your application is complete, accurate, and meets all requirements before you submit it. Get help from a registered migration agent if you need it. One mistake could cost you $2,000 and months of delays. Fourth, consider your alternatives seriously. At $2,000, Australia's student visa is pricing out many talented international students. Canada, the UK, and New Zealand all have much lower visa fees and also offer excellent education. Don't just assume Australia is your only option. Do a real cost comparison and make an informed choice. Fifth, if you're already in Australia on a student visa and need to extend or apply for a graduate visa, check the fees for those applications too. The graduate visa fee is now around $1,765. If you're switching visa types, you'll face these new fees. Budget accordingly. Now, if you're applying for a skilled work visa, here's what you need to do right now. First, check which income threshold applies to your visa type. Core skills stream, you need $76,515 minimum. Specialist skills stream, you need $141,210 minimum. Make sure you understand which category your occupation falls under. Second, confirm your job offer meets the new threshold. If your employer offered you a salary before July 1st based on the old thresholds, you need to renegotiate. Get updated documentation showing the new salary amount that meets the current threshold. Your visa application will be rejected if the salary is even $1 below the threshold. Third, verify that your employer is calculating the annual market salary rate correctly. They need to research what Australian workers in the same role are earning and pay you at least that amount or the threshold, whichever is higher. If your employer gets this wrong, your application will be refused. Many employers use migration agents to help them calculate this correctly. Fourth, understand that salary must be monetary earnings only for the 482 visa. If your employer is trying to meet the threshold by including accommodation, car allowances, or other non-monetary benefits, that won't work. Those things can be on top of your salary, but your actual cash salary must meet the threshold by itself. Fifth, if you're on the cusp of meeting the specialist skills threshold at $141,210 but not quite there, ask your migration agent about applying under the core skills stream instead. If your occupation is on the core skills occupation list, you might qualify under that stream with the lower $76,515 threshold. This could save your application. Sixth, consider timing very carefully. If you're close to being ready to apply and it's before the next July 1st deadline, try to lodge your application before the annual indexation happens. Every year, the thresholds go up by around 4 to 5%. Locking in this year's threshold could save you thousands in required salary. Let me tell you something that most migration agents won't be straight with you about. These fee increases and threshold increases are not going to stop. The Australian government has made it clear that they're using pricing and income requirements as tools to manage migration numbers. They want fewer students, and they want to ensure that skilled workers are highly paid. This is official policy now, and it's going to continue. The student visa went from $710 to $1,600 in July 2024, then to $2,000 in July 2025. There's already talk about further increases in 2026. Some analysts predict it could hit $2,500 or even $3,000. The government knows that international education is a huge moneymaker for Australia, worth billions to the economy. They're testing how high they can push fees while still maintaining enrollment numbers. The skilled visa income thresholds went up 4.6% this year. Last year, they went up by a similar amount. The year before that, too. This annual indexation is built into the system now. Every single year on July 1st, expect these thresholds to increase by roughly the same amount as wage growth in Australia. That means in 5 years, the core skills threshold could be close to $95,000. The specialist skills threshold could be over $170,000. Here's what this means for your planning. If you're serious about migrating to Australia, you need to act now rather than waiting. Delaying your application doesn't just mean you're getting older and potentially losing points. It also means you're going to face higher fees and higher income requirements. Every single year you wait makes the process more expensive and more difficult. But let me also give you some perspective on why these changes are happening, because understanding the government's reasoning can help you make better decisions. Australia is dealing with some serious challenges right now. Housing shortages in major cities, particularly Sydney and Melbourne. Rental vacancy rates are at record lows. Rents have increased dramatically. There's a huge amount of political pressure on the government to reduce migration numbers to ease housing pressure. Even though research shows that migration isn't actually causing the housing crisis, the government is responding to public perception and political pressure. They can't just shut down migration because the economy desperately needs skilled workers, and students contribute billions to the economy. So instead, they're using fees and income thresholds to manage numbers. It's a way to reduce volume without completely closing the door. For students specifically, there was a lot of concern about the quality of some education providers and about students using the visa primarily for immigration rather than education. The government has cracked down on dodgy colleges and increased scrutiny of applications. The massive fee increase is partly about revenue, but it's mostly about deterring people who aren't serious about studying. For skilled workers, the income threshold increases are about protecting local workers from wage competition and ensuring that migration is focused on genuine skill shortages in high-paying occupations. The government wants to avoid situations where employers use foreign workers as cheap labor. The high thresholds ensure that skilled migrants are being paid professional salaries. Now, let me address something important. Despite all these increases, Australia still offers incredible opportunities for the right people. If you're a genuine student who wants quality education and you can afford the fees, Australian universities are world-class. The teaching is excellent, the qualifications are globally recognized, and there are legitimate pathways to permanent residence after graduation if you study the right courses and build the right experience. If you're a skilled professional in a shortage occupation and you can secure a job offer that meets the income thresholds, Australia offers high salaries, excellent quality of life, great weather, beautiful environment, and stable democratic government. The work-life balance is generally good, the healthcare system is excellent, and it's a genuinely multicultural society where migrants are welcomed if they contribute. The key word there is if. If you can afford it. If you meet the requirements. If you're in a shortage occupation. If you have the skills and experience employers want. Australia is not trying to attract everyone anymore. They're being selective. The fee increases and threshold increases are deliberate filtering mechanisms. They want the best and brightest who can afford to come and who will earn high salaries. So here's my honest advice. Be realistic about whether Australia is the right choice for you, given your circumstances. If you're a student, and the $2,000 visa fee plus the $29,710 living expense requirement plus tuition is going to stretch you too thin financially, consider other countries. Canada, the UK, and New Zealand all offer excellent education at lower cost. Don't go into massive debt just to study in Australia if there are more affordable alternatives. If you're a skilled worker and you're struggling to get job offers that meet the new income thresholds, you might need to gain more experience, get additional qualifications, or target different occupations. The thresholds are only going to keep rising, so if you're not meeting them now, waiting isn't going to help. Consider whether you'd be better off migrating to a country with lower income requirements. But if you do meet the requirements, if you can afford the fees, if you have the skills Australia needs, then absolutely go for it. Don't let the fee increases discourage you. Yes, it's more expensive than it used to be. But the opportunities are still there for people who qualify. Australia still needs hundreds of thousands of skilled migrants and international students every single year. The door isn't closed, it's just more selective about who gets through. Here are the absolute key things you must remember. Student visa fees are now $2,000, up from $710 18 months ago. Additional applicants cost $1,225 if 18 or over, $400 if under 18. The financial capacity requirement is now $29,710 per year. All of this is non-refundable if your application is rejected. Core skills. Income threshold for skilled work visas is now $76,515. Specialist skills. Income threshold is now $141,210. These thresholds are indexed annually every July 1st and will continue rising by approximately 4 to 5% per year. Salary must be monetary earnings only for the 482 visa, not including non-monetary benefits. The income threshold increase of 4.6% means applicants need an additional $3,365 per year for core skills or $6,210 per year for specialist skills compared to last year. Employers must also pay the annual market salary rate, whichever is higher than the threshold. Getting this calculation wrong will result in visa refusal. These changes are not temporary. They're part of a deliberate government strategy to manage migration numbers and filter applicants. Expect fees to keep rising and income thresholds to keep increasing every single year. The window isn't closing entirely, but it's getting narrower and more expensive. If you're planning to migrate to Australia, act sooner rather than later, because waiting only makes it harder and more costly. Check the official Department of Home Affairs website for the most current fees and requirements. Use their visa pricing estimator tool to calculate exact costs for your situation. Consider using a registered migration agent, especially for skilled visas, because the rules are complex and mistakes are expensive. Make sure any agent you use is registered with the Migration Agents Registration Authority to avoid scammers. Budget not just for visa fees, but for all the associated costs. Health insurance, health examinations, police checks, document certifications, English language tests, skills assessments. These can easily add several $1,000s more on top of the visa fee itself. Have a realistic budget that includes everything before you start the process. For students, research your course and institution very carefully. Make sure it's a genuine, quality provider. Check employment outcomes for graduates in your field. Understand what your post-study work rights will be and what pathways to permanent residence exist for your occupation. Don't just pick any course because it's cheap or easy. Pick strategically based on immigration outcomes if PR is your eventual goal. For skilled workers, focus on occupations with genuine shortages. Check the core skills occupation list and the specialist skills occupation list. Make sure your occupation is listed and understand which stream it falls under. Build relationships with Australian employers in your field. Use LinkedIn aggressively. Consider coming to Australia on a tourist visa for job interviews if you can afford it, because employers often prefer to meet candidates in person. Think about regional options seriously. Regional visas often have slightly different requirements and may offer additional points or faster processing. Cities like Adelaide, Perth, Hobart, Brisbane, Townsville, Cairns, Darwin, and Wollongong are all considered regional for migration purposes or have specific regional programs. The lifestyle can be fantastic, cost of living is lower than Sydney or Melbourne, and you'll face less competition. And finally, stay informed about policy changes. Migration rules in Australia change frequently. What's true today might be different in 6 months. Follow official government sources like the Department of Home Affairs website. Subscribe to updates from registered migration agents or migration law firms. Join online communities of people going through the same process. Knowledge is power, and staying current with the latest information can save you time, money, and frustration. The bottom line is this: yes, Australian visa fees have skyrocketed in 2025. The student visa tripled in price in 18 months. Skilled work visa income requirements jumped by thousands of dollars. These changes are real, they're significant, and they're making Australia less accessible to many people who would have qualified in the past. But for those who still meet the requirements, Australia remains an incredible destination with genuine opportunities for a better life. The key is being informed, being realistic about your situation, being strategic about your approach, and being prepared to meet the new financial requirements. If you can do all that, then Australia is absolutely still achievable. Don't let the fee increases scare you away if you're qualified, but also don't ignore them. Factor them into your planning, make sure you can afford everything, and proceed with your eyes wide open about what it's really going to cost. I hope this breakdown has given you the clarity you need about Australia's visa fee increases in 2025. These are major changes that affect thousands of people, and understanding them fully is absolutely critical if you're planning to apply. Whether you're a student, a skilled worker, or someone bringing family to Australia, knowing these exact numbers and requirements can be the difference between a successful application and a very expensive rejection. Now you know what you're up against, you can plan accordingly and make the best decision for your future. Good luck with your Australian migration journey, and make sure you're fully prepared for these new costs before you submit anything.